There are certain things that we're always going to touch on. Where are we on sales? Where are we on closings, mortgage, insurance? What are some new innovative, techniques that we're deploying from a sales standpoint? Paying attention to numbers, the data, and letting that guide the conversation. Really focusing on making sure that you have the drive to keep going and instilling that on the team.
Welcome to Business Breakthroughs. I'm your host, Mark Hawkridge. My guest today is Joe Schiermann with Groundwork Mortgage and Insurance. They're an independent agency in St. Louis that deploys multi-channel approach to serving their customers with a broad range of options and solutions. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Maybe you could give us a little bit more background on Groundwork and your journey with the company.
Sure. Yeah. We actually just celebrated our 10th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Our 10 years in business is a long time. When you look at the track record of new startups, new ventures, you're usually high-fiving when you're past year 3 or year 5. It's a real milestone to get to 10 years, and we're excited for that. There's a lot of change that happens in 10 years. But we actually started the company inside of residential new construction. So our focus entirely from the mortgage standpoint and from the insurance standpoint has been historically working with residential contractors, new home builders, their customers, both serving their insurance needs and their mortgage needs as they're looking to build the house of their dreams.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, the 10-year milestone is really something to be proud of. I mean, so many small businesses struggle in years 1 through 3 in particular. And I think oftentimes it comes down to, a few things. It's around, planning and execution, certainly cash flow. But to navigate all of those different things that could go wrong and make it to 10 years is quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, well, you're 100% right. And one thing that our, president and founder, Jeff Berger, has done a really exceptional job in terms of managing the business, where most employees don't even know that it's occurring. But over the course of our 10 years, we have operated completely 100% on a cash basis.
Wow.
We have never borrowed a dollar. We've never taken up a loan. It's always been on cash, and that takes a lot of planning and a lot of discipline in order to do that. And so I give him an immense amount of credit for making certain that is our North Star.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to touch on that a little bit later because, despite being kind of bootstrapped, self-funded, you've grown really rapidly and done some amazing things in that 10-year window. So we will kind of touch on that a little bit. You know what, today, Joe, I wanted to have you on the show mainly because I've just been impressed with your thoughtful business leadership and tenacity and hustle in identifying and pursuing new opportunities for Groundwork. We've had a chance to work together a bit and just been really impressed with that. In particular, I'd like to know more about the ways that you're able to elevate above kind of just the day-to-day whirlwind of things that go on in your job and be able to focus on new opportunities. How do you create the space for yourself?
Well, that's a lot to unpack there, Mark. You're 100% right. I've got 2 young kids at home, 13 and just about 13 and 10. Both are heavily involved in gymnastics, which takes a lot of discipline. And I like to think that they get some of that discipline from both my wife and myself. We were both college athletes, and we both dove in college. She at Mizzou, myself at Missouri State. And early on in life, it takes understanding that the only way to win is to have structure and to commit to a process, no matter how difficult or challenging it really can be. And there are some challenging times that you have to work with as an entrepreneur. There's late nights. There's work that you want to do, and there's work that you need to do. And a lot of times the need to do kind of wipes out the slate for what you want to do in terms of growing the business. So that is a real challenge. Unfortunately, we've had a really committed team at Groundwork. A lot of the individual contributors have been with us for long term, so they understand the business and they understand what it takes to make sure that you may not be juggling three balls at one time, you may be juggling eight or nine, and understanding, of course, that some of those balls are going to fall and you're going to fail. But so long as you learn from those failures, they're going to lead to success. And I give you a lot of credit, Mark, for being open to our initial conversations. And I think that that's a lot of it as well, is finding the right individuals that you want to do business with and that you want to work with, not because you want something from them individually, but that you really connect in a way that is in line with the way that you run your business. And so I give you an immense amount of credit for that as well.
No, thanks. I love that you brought up the athletics, because I found, at least in my career, I really enjoy working with people that were former athletes or current athletes. It's because of the intensity and focus and determination that they bring to business. Not to say that non-athletes don't or can't do the same. It's just been something that I've seen as a through line. And I did a little bit of background research on you, and not only did you dive in college, but it looks like you also were a diving coach for Missouri State afterwards, which speaks to both kind of your own dedication as an athlete, but also your interest and willingness to coach others.
Yes, thank you. I actually coached, I started coaching summer programs here locally while I was in high school, in college, and our diving coach in the midst of my senior year decided to retire at the end of the season. And there was kind of a mad scramble to determine who could best fill those shoes. And it was a little late in the season. So our head swim coach approached me and asked if I would be willing to coach the team for 2 years while the school paid for my master's on scholarship. And so that was really fun. It opened up a side of me that I didn't know. You always know that it's there, but that combination of competitiveness and the ability to coach, which is really important when leading people, because I've found that you can say the same thing to 5 different people and there's going to be 5 different interpretations. And so as a coach or a leader, you have to be able to know your audience, know your employees, know your athletes, and be able to tailor the message according to the way that you think that they are going to receive it the right way in order to really get buy-in.
Right, right. I think that's how cool that came together during your MBA, when you're learning all of this stuff in terms of leadership and concept, but you also had the ability to kind of have practical application in the coaching at the same time. It's pretty neat. So
Yeah, it's a fun little takeaway there, just as a side. My wife dove from Mizzou, and I was actually coaching Missouri State at the time. And our paths didn't cross until later on in life, after both of our diving and coaching careers were over. But it's really cool to have that connection afterwards.
Was diving somehow the way you met, or?
Yeah, after I got done coaching college, I coached a club program that was pretty competitive. The goal was to qualify in place at nationals and obtain a college scholarship. And so I had a group of athletes that we trained really from 6th, 7th grade all the way up to and through high school. And then once they started going off to college, I had our first kid, Olivia, along the way in my coaching career, slowly but surely dissipated because I wanted to focus on family. But yeah, I was at a club regional meet in Mizzou in Columbia when she was a 5th-year senior, and met that way.
All right. Is there still a rivalry between you in terms of the two schools?
No, not really,
Yeah.
because growing up in St. Louis, I always grew up a Mizzou fan. And even though I went to Missouri State, I always had a healthy amount of respect for the program and the diving coach that was at Mizzou at the time. I competed against through high school and college, so it's a really close knit sport.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it is. It's cool. Well, jumping back to kind of, these juggling all balls and being able to focus on kind of new strategic opportunities. How did you go about building that into the fabric of groundwork to create the opportunities to explore other things besides, the maybe the glass balls that you're juggling that are the most important things to the company?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I would say that my response has evolved over time. And we'll talk more about Jeff in the future, but he's a tremendous leader, a tremendous speaker, and he is, I would say, the visionary of groundwork. And I was the uh, individual that was leading by example. And with those two things, because I found and I've studied, you can't have two visionaries as part of a small organization because you end up conflicting with each other. You need a visionary, an individual who is really leading the charge in the ship off to battle, and then you need the leader who is directing the team and managing the team and managing the outcomes and being comfortable with accountability. It's a bit like when you're in small business, you work as much as you can, but it's a bit like Icarus getting too close to the flames and the fire sometimes, and your wings melt, and then you're down. But it's getting back up and making certain that the leadership that you're giving to the team, number one, is making yourself available no matter how busy you are. It's very challenging to do. And also leading by example in terms of work ethic and the way that you handle, customer interactions that can be challenging, making certain that you're holding employees to accountability in a way that, again, they're going to receive the message a little bit differently. Going back to the athletic mindset, I had athletes and employees who could take very direct feedback. That's the way that I was motivated. I want you to tell me exactly what I'm doing wrong, and then I'm going to correct it. There's other individuals, other athletes, other employees that if you have that direct conversation with them, they're going to go into their shell and not be responsive. So, if I'm looking back on my journey as a leader inside of Groundwork, it's really the doer, and I'd say the team captain, the team coach, but now working into with Jeff's leadership, some things that, and I think we'll probably get into those items on the call here, but things that are very intriguing to me personally. But you still rely on all of the learnings that you've gathered over the past 10 years, and then you find something that you're passionate about. And when you're passionate about it, it doesn't feel like work. And if you have a company that embraces the ability to change and pursue other goals that may not be within your insurance and mortgage space, then you run towards those with a full head of steam.
Yeah, it's great that you have the space and intention for that in the organization. I mean, you talked about Jeff as the visionary and kind of described, at least in entrepreneurial operating system parlance, as kind of the integrator role. How deliberate were the two of you in how you constructed the responsibilities and roles between kind of that visionary and integrator, the person then taking the vision and making it happen?
It's a great question, and it's something that has evolved over the course of 10 years working together. And now I would say that it's very focused. in terms of what our roles are now and going into the future. So we always laugh because in mortgage, the majority of mortgage providers that are out there focus on selling seasons. You're looking at the spring season where people are starting to move, and the preponderance of new homes are sold between Super Bowl Sunday and Mother's Day. And that's when they're get up and they're planning for the year. And then people are moving into their homes in new construction typically by August, so they can be there for the school year. So there is a cycle to that. And what we have really done that I believe is a differentiator is every August is when we begin our offsite planning and budgeting for the next year. So it's something that really evolves over the course of the back half of the year, as opposed to looking at a set time in November, December, maybe even January when people are business planning and you're looking at what is directly in front of you. Our preference is to conservatively look at in August and also see what essentially where the goalposts are on if we're very conservative or if we're an outperform. And then we continue to dialogue over the course of the next 4 months before we are meeting with the employees and having that conversation about the future, which is typically end of November, very beginning part of December.
I like that process and very thoughtful, and there's a nice chunk of time there that allows you to work those things out together before you then take it to the employee base, and I would assume at that point it's pretty polished. How are the two of you staying in sync and making sure that you don't have gaps and overlaps, not just kind of in an annual cycle, but even on a weekly or monthly basis? How do the two of you manage that?
It's a really good question as well. I would say it's probably nonstop. We are in constant communication, early morning, evening. Not necessarily that we are both working those long mad hours, but if there's communication that we can get back and forth to each other off-site or in advance of the next day, we're certainly going to do that. We've also stacked hands on every 2 weeks having our employee connect and making certain that we are showing the team where we are going, reminding them of our budget and our goals and where we're at. And that's where the accountability comes into play. I think that weekly, those sorts of meetings are a little bit too much. Monthly, you may lose sight on achieving some of the goals inside the month. So we landed on bi-weekly, every other week. And then we meet in advance of that to make sure that we are dialed in together on who is focusing on what every 2 weeks, every month, every year.
That's great. Did you just land on that structure organically, or is that following some recommendation or some framework?
It was more organic. We used to have sales meetings every week. It felt like a lot in terms of managing the team and holding them to account. And I don't know that we ever shifted to a month. It just didn't feel right.
Right.
So yeah, since before COVID, we've committed to having bi-weekly meetings with the team just to make sure that we're all on the same page.
It's really cool. Does that follow? I mean, have you created a structure around that, or are they more ad hoc? What does that meeting look like?
The meeting, it depends on the time of year. If it's a spot on the calendar, there are certain things that we're always going to touch on. Where are we on sales? Where are we on closings, mortgage, insurance? What are some new innovative, techniques that we're deploying from a sales standpoint? We always go through what we call pipeline management with our director of operations, Melissa. And she kind of brings up to speed the team where we're at on a month where, it could really vary wildly. Some months we've had 97 closings. Some months we've had 35 closings. Some months we've had 17 closings. So it really ebbs and flows. But when you
Sure.
focus on the entire year, because of the new construction cycle, that's when you achieve the goals, because we've always been a data-centered company. We know our data, we know our cycles, we know where they are going to be. It's easy to look at a given month and say, well, we had 70 closings this month and we've only got 12 next month. What happened? Well, if you look back historically at the data over 10 years, that cycle has been on repeat, given the new construction cycle, thanks to that effect. So paying attention to numbers, the data, and letting that guide the conversation. But then sometimes we'll roll in things like the 401k plan, and how we succeeded in the year, and this is the matching that we're going to do, and profit sharing. Sometimes we'll talk about challenges and successes. That challenge of being tenacious in the face of failure, and closed doors, and that thing that all of us have experienced in business, and just really focusing on making sure that you have the drive to keep going, and instilling that on the team.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, I guess, around that. I mean, one is just in the face of 17 closing month, or 12, whatever it might be. I mean, how do you stay resilient in the face of those challenges, and how do you um, impart that on the team, and how do you allow them to remain resilient?
I go back to our planning session in August, and really understanding the numbers. And when we communicate goals to the team, they'll know that in July we should have an uptick, and then in August there will be a downtick. So if you want to change that outcome, we're very, as a business, we're very comfortable with this outcome because we're looking at the big picture. If you don't want that as part of your pay package, your closings, your commissions, what are you going to do about it? How can you change the outcome for you personally? And that's different for everybody. Some loan officers and agents are very comfortable with that annual look. Some of them want to manage their cash flow a little bit more on a monthly basis. And we sit down with them and say, what's your plan? Here's some opportunities that I see, and how can we help you execute on that to change that potential outcome? But if we're communicating and we're doing our job on the back half of the year and showing the team the journey going forward into the year, then there shouldn't be any real surprises. But yeah, you never can tell with some responses. But I really think that the planning session is the core to that philosophy.
Yeah, it sounds also like the ability to tailor the situation to the individual, right? Because as you mentioned, there's people have different needs and different views on either the year or the month, and being able to focus in on that person and their needs and their productivity or their accountability. Um, that's a really good approach. The other thing that really sticks with me in this is just the amount of communication, the amount of deliberate communication that you're doing throughout the organization. One of my business coaches says that if you're not talking about the vision to the point at which it becomes a parody for the employees, then you're probably not talking about it enough. And I really believe in that. And it sounds like your meetings every 2 weeks are a mechanism to continue to talk about the vision and keep people on track and grounded in the primary focus.
It's a great point, and you explain it very well. I remember, I'll misquote it, but in one of my business readings, in terms of coaching and leading individuals through change, you have to say the same thing, maybe in a different way, maybe the vision, articulate the vision no less than 7 times before it actually sinks in, before the team realizes, okay, this is what we're really going to do.
Yeah.
If you articulate your vision once or twice and then you let it go, it's very easy to drift off course. Excuse me. But about halfway through, 3, 4, 5, 7 times, people are buying in that because they now know that that's the new vision, the new expectation on how things are going to roll.
Yeah. And going all the way back to kind of your diving coach experience, I mean, being able to do that at the athlete level and understanding what each person needs or wants, this helps you be more effective in that.
One can hope so.
Exactly. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't work with my children so well. But
Yeah. Sometimes a joke, business would be really easy without people. it's a people game.
right.
So let's go back to kind of the 10-year anniversary for Groundwork. I mean, as and the fact that it's bootstrapped, you've accomplished a tremendous amount in that time, and you've evolved, even the line of business quite a bit. I'm curious to maybe learn a little bit more about what that evolution of Groundwork has looked like, or both in insurance and in mortgage, and dealing both with consumers as well as with home builders. Um, what was the arc there, and how did you make it happen so quickly and effectively?
Quickly and effectively, I think, are two different discussions. But yes, when you are working with home builders and you are really trying to get to know and understand their process to make them better, to make their closing, monthly closings more smooth operationally. So there's two different types of builders, probably more, but for the most part, the production-based builders, the reason that they buy into the groundwork journey and the groundwork program is because they are utilizing their balance sheet to build these homes and then close on a conventional FHA, VA loan at the back end. A custom home builder does not feel that. They typically have a customer that is taking out financing. They are underwritten, and then the home builder is just getting disbursements along the way. But production-based builders, they'll take a $5,000 down payment and then begin constructing a $500,000 house. And on too many occasions, and I'll probably get it in a little bit on a tangent right here, but on too many occasions, when it got down to the end game, when it got down to the closing, they would find out that the pre-qualification document that they had on their consumer was not fully underwritten by a underwriter. And now they submit the files to underwriting, and lo and behold, the person is not qualified. So now they've got a spec to sell. They have advertising costs. The juice is running on the commercial line.
Right.
And so really the value that Groundwork brings to the table is the speed of which we can execute on delivering loan commitments to home builders. And we've always had 40% as kind of that mark where we can really make an impact, or we're just a partner that is helping out a home builder. And if we're at 40% and we're communicating back and forth with the home builder, well, then they can look at their pipeline and say, all right, well, I got 100 closings this month. 40 of them are Groundwork. I don't need to worry about them because I know where they're at. I need to look at the other 60% in order to determine where my potential pipeline disruptors might be. And when you find builders who are okay with that approach and love the over communication, it's very easy to have that trajectory go up quickly within their organization because they see the vision, they see the value, and they want the value.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of that value is risk mitigation for the builder. The last thing they want is to have the interest clock running on their loans and not be able to fill that house, or have to then, to your point, get aggressive with marketing or discounting in order to get somebody into it.
Correct. And then on the insurance side of the equation, so I don't know if we've had this discussion, but the first 10 years of my career, I actually worked inside of insurance carriers. I was started off out of college after my MBA and took an entry level job at an insurance company as a property claims adjuster. And then at the end of 10 years, I was running the large loss litigation unit for the company, but they were acquired and they moved to Cleveland. I did not want to move to Cleveland. So enter my role into private insurance and mortgage with Jeff Berger and the building of this business together. But insurance has always been, for the last 10 years, the cost saver for the consumer. We very meticulously put together a group of insurance carriers that love new construction. So their turn times are very fast. They know what they're getting, so their pricing is great because everything is brand new. You're not getting a 15-year-old roof on an existing house. You don't have to worry about the copper plumbing or wires, knob and tube. Everything is brand new, so it's very easy to churn and burn that. And over the course of the last 10 years, we have placed insurance for, on average, I would say 30 households a month for 10 years. And so what was the little small shiny object that we had with Groundwork Insurance that was not yielding a lot of profitability because you're putting them back in. Well, now you put 10 years of experience in an insurance agency with your book of business, and now it's on par with the mortgage operations financially.
Interesting. So when it was launched, was Groundwork first mortgage and then became insurance, or vice versa?
Yeah, the launch for mortgage was November 7th of 2014. And I want to say March of 2015 is when we launched the insurance agency. So pretty close in terms of launching together. I would say that the insurance agency has done an exceptional job as well of, those tight deals in a rising rate environment when $10 a month matters, of either being qualifiable or not. Having a loan officer that can go over to a producer and say, hey, I need this premium lowered just so we can close the deal.
Right.
How can we make good changes to this policy to reduce the cost of insurance, still make sure that they're covered, but get the closing? And that doesn't happen every month, but probably happens 8 to 10 times a year.
Yeah, it's interesting. But it strikes me that, neither of these lines of business, at least the way I think about it, are easy to stand up. Opening up a mortgage company or opening up an insurance company, whether you partner with, other lenders or insurers or not, it's still a lot of work and a lot of regulatory details. What's required to make that leap? Within 1 year to launch then the insurance division seems like a big task.
Yeah, so it took probably a year and a half of diligence, research, work behind getting those two companies launched separately. Mortgage is regulated on the federal level. Primarily, there's state laws that apply, and it's audited by the state, but everyone gets one set of rules for the most part in mortgage. Which was challenging in insurance is every state is different. It's run by the Schiermann Antitrust Act, I believe, that mandated that insurance be governed at the state level, and therefore each state has different limits, different compliance protocols, different underwriting everything. So you have to make certain that from a regulatory standpoint what you're up against. But once you create the platform and you're just monitoring for changes, much like I'm sure you do with Property Radar, with ever evolving and changing regulations, as long as you've got the structure, you can flow inside of the compliance standpoint or inside the compliance regs if anything changes.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's interesting you bring that up. I mean, one of the things that changes very rapidly right now is kind of privacy, data privacy, and there's individual state legislation popping up left and right. In a lot of cases, they'll try to follow suit on another state, but then they'll put a little different twist on it. It's really challenging. It's not. I mean, you can be nimble and you can respond to these things, but I found that in our business, at least, um, it's requiring more and more time and effort to both stay on top of existing or new legislation, and then secondarily to be able to then staff behind it to make sure that you have the tools and processes to satisfy all these different requirements.
100%. And if you get it wrong, the price of poker is steep.
It's very high, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then just by intention, I mean, at least for ourselves, we have a desire to be on the right side of that and to do things well. Aside from the penalties if you don't, but it's becoming a big thing in the business, and something you don't start the business and think about, I'm going to staff and build around compliance, but that's where you are. That's where we are.
Well, I'll give a real-time example as to why I think we're going to continue to see change across the board. There is, a extreme focus on trigger leads right now.
Right.
We don't have to go into all of the details, but we spoke to a former consumer of ours, and this is just a real-time example on the speed of how quickly these things have evolved. A customer that we closed last year, VA loan. Now rates have gone down for VA customers. The seasoning, if you're not aware, there's you have to stay in your loan on a VA loan for 210 days past your first payment. So you cannot refinance until you're after that 210 days. And we're on the phone with the consumer explaining to him that we are going to pull credit, and that as soon as we pull credit, you will be bombarded
Right.
by telephone calls, emails, and just ignore them, and they will subside eventually. It's just it's a black stain on the industry. And Mark, I sent that email to him yesterday at 11:57 a.m., giving that word of caution. By 12:04 p.m., he responded back and said, "I'm really happy that you sent this because I've had 10 missed calls already."
Yeah. Please make it stop.
Make it stop.
It's horrible.
And it's terrible. People don't want that, and I can see how their voice will be heard overall in terms of trigger leads and the way that the government or the regulations will change the requirements. But I know that
Yeah.
Property Radar is not trigger leads. Property Radar is focused entirely on the right things, the right strategies, which is another reason why I was gravitated to you and your company, and have had nothing but great things to share and say about our interactions.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's friend of mine is the chairman of company in California that's been very vocal and working on legislation around the trigger leads. And yeah, it's a mess. I mean, from the consumer's perspective, nobody wants to just be bombarded with all of these unsolicited offers, and yeah, it needs to be fixed.
I love capitalism. I love free market.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Yeah, the feedback that is sent to us from consumers, we'll just say, for an example, we're quoting somebody 5.75 on a VA loan. And within minutes, they'll receive an email from the loan servicer or somebody else that trigger leads saying, we'll get you 5%. And then they immediately come back to us and say, well, why can't you give me 5%? I said, well, let's have a conversation. You see how they're charging $21,000 to get down to 5%. And you shouldn't have to do, like, if you have your North Star, you have your compass on right, the marketing pieces that are going out are flashy. They're supposed to get eye attention, but really it just creates frustration with the consumer's process.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And for them to then engage with that other firm or go back to you, have to go through that education process and ultimately be right back where they were. Right. And
Right.
but now with just more frustration. Yeah.
Right.
Joe, how large is the team at Groundwork?
It's ebbs and flowed. We've had operations in Kansas City. We've had boots on the ground there with the team. We have managed that from afar. We've got as high as, I'd say, 20 employees collectively. We've gone as low as 5 employees. So it's always fluctuating in and around that area. We've prided ourselves on being a small but mighty company that focuses on processes and relationship building, as opposed to pushing a lot of numbers towards a
Right.
goal.
Well, I mean, yeah, that sounds pretty efficient. I'm curious, as you've built the team and you're having a lot of communication, how intentional or how did you go about the team building process to make sure that you identified and bring in high performers that also match the culture that you and Jeff have done so well to create?
Yeah, yeah. Looking back, we've made some mistakes on hiring people, and I would say that those mistakes that were made on new hires were quick hires, where we would forego the process of really vetting an individual and making sure that they are bought into the vision. Those I need an employee right now. I need a processor right now. I need them. And you fast track what would typically take a much longer process. And time again, we took our lumps for it.
Yep.
But with the original core Groundwork family members, that we call them, they were bought into the vision from day one. They're individuals like myself that help mold and create the company. And when you do that, there's incredible amount of buy-in with that.
Yeah, well, I've felt those lumps myself. Looking back, there's that very simplistic guidance, hire slowly, fire fast. But better yet is be really intentional and thoughtful about what you need, and then finding the right individual for that. Because it's disruptive. Especially in small organizations, it's so disruptive to go through a recruitment process and make a bad decision, both for that person as well as for the business, only to then start it over again. The real costs there are big, but the opportunity costs are huge. At least I've learned. Yep.
Well, and I think that goes back to your initial question here, Mark, on how do you find the bandwidth to do everything and to make sure that you're finding the time. And it's in those moments when maybe you can't find the time that you're making those rash decisions as an entrepreneur, as a leader in the organization. And those are the lessons that you stack, the coins that you stack along the way, that help you scale the business in the future. But I love your word intentional. That's a really critical, important word, because if you're not intentional, if you're not really focused on what needs to be done and which way it needs to be done, then you may have some bad outcomes that you're just going to have to learn from.
Yeah. Yeah. We found each other because you were doing a lot of creative thought work and kind of exploring the art of possible, and got us talking and working on some things. What's next for Groundwork? Where do we go from here?
So the evolution with Groundwork, if you can imagine, and I'm sure that you can, because we've been in this in our businesses for a while. When we first started Groundwork, we were very intentional on face-to-face interactions with consumers. If an individual is going to purchase a home, we are going to meet them in the display. We are going to shake their hand. We're going to have the conversation, and we did that 600 times a year with our loan officer team. COVID changed a lot of that, and we had to embrace technology in a way that we had not. But we always thought that the interaction face-to-face with a consumer would stay. That consumers would want to carve time out of their busy days to meet with an individual face-to-face. But now we've seen that people have adapted. People are now used to technology stacks and Zoom videos and calls, and looking at somebody in the eye face-to-face here on a video call, although your dopamine response is still not the same when you're face-to-face with them, it's still better than just a telephone call or an email. So really my soul searching was how can Groundwork make the industry better, both locally here and on a national level. And there's a long answer and a short answer to that, but providing our core solutions from an insurance standpoint and guidance to other mortgage brokers across the country on how to successfully navigate the home builder mentality so that consumers across the country can get a fair deal. They can both buy the dream house that they've been looking for, and not worry about if they are being taken advantage of a loan officer or insurance producer. That there really is the best of both worlds. And I think that we're at the infancy right now of really running towards that vision. And I'm excited for the future. The other part of it is there are tangent businesses that can be monitored, reviewed, and created from this outlook. And we've been really focusing on working with investors who are looking for hard money lenders and, frankly, an insurance broker agency who understands what it is to be accountable to a timeline. Because a lot of these closings happen within 5 to 7 days. They find a house, they make an offer on the house, they get the money, and then all of a sudden the emergency brake is being thrown because they can't find the insurance guy to actually get the policy that is in place. So I've been doing a lot of work recently, and really excited about September and what it's going to yield, because we've been doubling down on our technology stack in order to make us a lot more efficient and increase the speed at which we can play the game.
Nice. Well, I look forward to watching that happen as well. But congratulations again on the 10 years, and also, maybe more importantly, congratulations to you and Jeff, finding one another and establishing what I perceive to be a really strong yin and yang relationship that is works. And so I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. It's one point that I wanted to end with here, Mark, because I'm sure that a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners, it's easy to feel like you're on an island. It's easy to feel like you're the individual that is rowing in a direction, no matter what that vision might be. So I have found that it's really, really important to surround yourself with, if you haven't read the book yet, you should, Tribalism.
Yeah,
Find your tribe that is both, friends that just deeply care for you on an individual level, that you don't even interact with them on a business standpoint, and then other friends who are in small business, because we're all fighting the same battle. You think that what you're encountering is different than what somebody else is seeing. You sit down and have a 30-minute conversation with them, and you're like, okay, yeah, you're
that's
going
right.
through the same stuff that we're all going through.
Yeah,
And just being able to talk about that is really important.
couldn't agree more. It's funny. I participate in a lot of mastermind groups in business, and uh, it's often interesting just to see people from very different business backgrounds and business approaches struggling with the same common situations. The approach it feels unique, but you're right. It's often not unique, and there's so much certainty and comfort that comes from leaning on that tribe and interacting with them, both delivering value as well as receiving. And yeah, 100% agree.
Loves.
Joe, how can people find more out about you or about Groundwork?
So they can visit, we have two different websites, www.groundworkmortgage.com and groundwork-ins.com. There'll be a lot of changes that are coming on both of those sites as we build this out, and we're just trying to keep up with the pace of play that you're leading out in the market right now.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for carving out some time to speak with me and the audience. Some great stuff there.
Honored. Thank you very much, Mark.
You're right.